Let's take a live look now at the White House. In about 2 hours, the president will be meeting with Senate Democratic leaders Harry Reid and Dick Durbin to congratulate them on their party's win and to talk about how they're going to work together. Here to talk about that from the left, Air America's Rachel Maddow, and from the right, Armstrong Williams, co-host of the morning show on WWRL. Thanks for being with us, both of you.
Thanks for having us. Good morning.
So, Armstrong, we're hearing from the president, we're hearing from Nancy Pelosi yesterday, and I'm sure we're going to hear from Harry Reid and from Dick Durbin that things are working, that they're going to work together. This is a great spirit of bipartisanship. But in terms of what really will happen over the next 2 years, what do you think the president is going to have to give up, so to speak, to make things happen?
The president is definitely going to have to take a look at the way the war in Iraq is being fought. He has to come to the conclusion that it is a civil war. He must understand that what happened this past Tuesday was a referendum on the war in Iraq, which was a referendum on him. I think he showed a lot of humility and a lot of class in his meeting with Speaker Pelosi. I think he will do the same with Reid and Durbin. And I think the president has understood it's a new day. The Republicans had their opportunities in 2000, 2002, 2004, when the American voters trusted them. The American voters want to change. And I think the president has to be the leader that puts that change in effect and do the will of the people.
Rachel, the Democrats have been trumpeting a mandate from Tuesday's election. But I want to take a look at an editorial today by Charles Krauthammer in today's Washington Post. It reads this: both parties have moved to the right. The Republicans have shed the last vestiges of their centrist past, and the Democrats have widened their tent to bring in a new crop of blue dog conservatives. Was this election truly a euphoric victory for Democrats, or are we seeing a much different Democratic Party in power right now?
I think that Charles Krauthammer would love for that to be true, but honestly, this was the election of Sherrod Brown. This is the election of Carol Shea Porter in New Hampshire. This is the election where the South Dakota abortion ban went down. This is the election where all three taxpayer Bill of Rights, these conservative limiting state government spending bills, all of those measures went down. This is an election that was actually about a huge progressive victory in the country, and the conservatives would love to say that they've changed the country personally and individually, and they should all be individually credited for it. But really, what's happened is conservatism has been rejected in this election. It was a much more progressive Democratic victory than even I expected as somebody who's on the left, and I think that's wishful thinking.
Even though 1,424 votes in Montana would have kept the Senate Republican.
Yeah, but it didn't. I mean, both the House and
But it was close. That's my point, I guess, that it was razor thin. It wasn't like an overwhelming majority for Democrats, specifically in the Senate.
Well, you know, the Democrats took 6 seats, and they took the Senate, and they took the House by at least 29 seats. And so you can call that razor thin, but I'm not sure very many people will agree with you. Even the president called it a thumping, and for once I agree with him on that.
He did indeed. Armstrong, the Washington Times is reporting, and we have reported as well, that the RNC chairman Ken Mehlman is stepping down. Mehlman says he made that decision back in August before these elections took place, and it is a typical 2-year term. But should he take part of the fall for the Republicans thumping?
Well, there's much blame that can go around. Certainly the president, Mr. Mehlman. You know, this is what happens. The White House and this administration, you know, the president was fighting this war on terror. He did not understand that the people were to become disgusted. You know, change is very good in this country. There's been a real alignment of power, a change in the balance of power. Democrats have gone through this. They've sort of been in the wilderness for the last 15 or 16 years. And hopefully they had the same problem before. This is just the way power works sometimes. But I think, Mr. Mehlman, they just did not have the right strategy. What happened was that Democrats moved to the Senate, took many of their positions away. Look at Heath Shuler in North Carolina and other conservatives, even Jim Webb, how he won in Virginia. No, I don't necessarily agree with Ms. Maddow. I think there are many Democrats who won, but they did not win as Republicans. They're still conservatives. I think the American people want to change in the war. They don't want the bickering. They don't want the fighting. And I think that Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and those are not going to respond to people like Ms. Maddow, who wants to punish the president and want to jump up jubilant as if they have a mandate. There's not a mandate. They've got to be very careful with the next 2 years if they want to hold on to this power for quite some time.
Rachel,
never said I wanted to punish
I want to talk to you about Joe Lieberman, because that's certainly a big part of this next Senate, this 110th Congress. Democrats abandoned him. There's a report out today that Lieberman didn't even take Harry Reid's call on election night when he won, and he took, I believe, Susan Collins of Maine's call that night. What are Democrats going to have to do? I mean, will they have to win him over, even though he says he's going to caucus with Democrats?
He says that he'll caucus with the Democrats. The New York Times asked him point blank this week if there's anything the Republican Party or the White House could offer him that would make him switch parties, and he said no. Joe Lieberman is somebody who I was never happy with in the Democratic Party before this election. I kind of plan on taking the same attitude toward him that I took before. The idea that Democrats only want to punish the president now, or that we want to be jubilant and somehow be as extreme in government as the Republicans were when Newt Gingrich took over in '94, again, is some sort of fantasy. It's as much of a fantasy as the idea that what just happened with the Democrats taking over is some sort of victory for conservatism. It just doesn't make sense. And the right can try to spin that as the narrative of this election, but it doesn't actually make sense.
Well, that's good to hear. We all
Air
agree
America's
there.
Rachel Maddow and Armstrong Williams ending on a happy note. Thanks.
Thank you.